There is a decision most people never realize they are making, and it is quietly running their entire life. It is this. They have decided that their happiness is waiting on someone else changing first. Their spouse needs to be more attentive. Their grown child needs to get their act together. Their brother needs to stop making the same mistake. Their friend needs to finally listen to good advice. And so the years go by, one conversation at a time, one hint, one gentle suggestion, one more attempt to help someone see what they refuse to see. And at the end of all that effort, the people around them are, more or less, exactly who they always were. Meanwhile, the person doing all that work has grown tired in a way that sleep does not fix. I want to spend the next while talking with you about this, because I think it is one of the quietest thieves of a good life. Jim Rohn built an entire philosophy around a simple idea. You cannot change other people. You can only change yourself. And that single shift is worth more than anything else you will ever do. I have spent a long time studying that idea, watching it play out in my own life and in the lives of people close to me. And I want to walk you through what I have learned. My name is Walter, and what I am about to share is not a theory. It is something that costs people decades if they miss it. And it is something that sets people free the moment they finally understand it. Here is the part most people get wrong from the very beginning. Trying to fix someone else does not feel like a mistake while you are doing it. It feels like love. It feels like responsibility. It feels like being a good husband, a good wife, a good parent, a good friend. Nobody wakes up one day and thinks, I am going to spend the next 15 years of my life trying to reshape another human being, and I am going to lose myself in the process. It happens slowly. One small suggestion here. One well-meaning comment there. A conversation that starts with, I just think you'd be happier if, and before you know it, you have built an entire relationship on the foundation of waiting for someone to become a different version of themselves. If any part of that sounds familiar to you, if there is a name or two already forming in your mind right now, I want you to stay with me. Because what I am going to walk through today is going to change how you see every relationship in your life. And if you find yourself nodding along, thinking, this is exactly what I've been living, go ahead and drop a comment below and tell me who came to mind. I read every single one, and I promise you, you are not alone in this. Jim Rohn used to say that the challenge is not to change the world. The challenge is to change yourself, because if you change yourself, everything around you changes as a result. That sounds simple when you first hear it. It sounds almost too simple. But underneath that one sentence is a truth that most people spend their whole lives avoiding, because it means admitting something uncomfortable. The person you have been trying hardest to fix might not be them at all. It might be a mirror you have been staring into without realizing it. There is a cost to all of this, and it is bigger than most people are willing to admit. It is not just wasted breath in arguments that go nowhere. It is years, actual years of a life that will not come again, spent managing someone else's choices instead of building your own. And by the time most people notice what has happened, they are standing in the middle of their 50s or 60s, looking at a spouse who never changed, a friend who never grew, a sibling who is exactly the same, and asking themselves the hardest question of all. Where did my own life go while I was so busy trying to build theirs? Stay with me, because in a few minutes, I am going to show you exactly what to do instead. And it is simpler than you think, but it will ask something of you that most people are not ready to give. So let's start at the beginning. Let's talk honestly about what this actually costs a person, because I don't think most people have ever sat down and calculated it. Every hour spent hoping someone else will finally get it. Every rehearsed conversation running through your head at 2 a.m. Every time you bite your tongue and then let it out anyway, because you just can't help yourself. That is time and energy pulled directly out of your own account. And here's the part that stings. It is not renewable. You do not get those hours back. You cannot save them up and spend them later on your own goals, your own health, your own peace of mind. Jim Rohn talked often about the value of a day, the value of an hour, because he understood something most people ignore until it is too late. Time spent is time spent, whether it produces anything or not. And trying to change another adult human being, Someone who has not asked for your help and has not decided for themselves that change is even necessary produces almost nothing. Not because you are not trying hard enough, not because you have not found the right words yet. It produces nothing because it is aimed at the wrong target from the start. Think about someone in your own life right now, someone you have been quietly trying to improve. Maybe it is a spouse who could stand to be more organized. Maybe it is a grown child who keeps making the same financial mistakes. Maybe it is a friend who stays in relationships that are clearly not good for them. Now ask yourself honestly, how long have you been at this? A year? 5 years? Longer? And in that time, has it worked? Not have they listened politely. Not have they agreed with you in the moment. Has anything actually permanently changed? For most people, the honest answer is no. And that is not because they picked the wrong approach or said it the wrong way at the wrong time. It is because there is a rule at work here that does not bend for good intentions. People change when they decide to change, not when someone else decides for them. You can hand someone the best advice in the world, and if they are not ready to receive it, it slides right off, the way water runs off a stone. It is not a failure of your love or your effort. It is simply how people work. Here is something worth sitting with. Think about the real changes you have made in your own life, the habits you actually broke, the patterns you actually fixed. Who was responsible for that? Was it someone nagging you week after week? Or was it a private moment, something inside you, where you finally decided you had had enough and you were ready? For almost everyone, it is the second one. And if that is true for you, it is true for the people you are trying to change too. Nobody is exempt from that rule, no matter how much they love the person doing the pushing. This does not mean the people in your life are broken or behind where they should be. It means they are exactly where they have decided to be for now. And the only thing your effort accomplishes, when it is not welcomed, is that it wears down the very relationship you are trying to protect. There is an unexpected truth buried inside all of this, one that changes everything once you really understand it. The person you are trying hardest to fix is often not the problem you think they are. The real project, the only one that has ever actually been in your hands, has been sitting quietly the entire time, waiting for you to notice it. And that is exactly where we are headed next. Let's go a layer deeper, because understanding that you cannot fix someone else is only half the picture. The other half, the part that actually changes your life, is understanding what to do with all that energy once you stop pouring it into someone else's choices. Jim Rohn had a phrase he used again and again: work harder on yourself than you do on your job. I would add to that, work harder on yourself than you do on anybody else's life. Because here is something worth being honest about. For a lot of people, trying to fix someone else is not really about that other person at all. It is a very effective way of avoiding the harder, scarier work of looking at your own life. Think about it this way. If you spend your evenings worrying about your spouse's habits, you don't have to spend that same time looking at your own health, your own finances, your own unfinished goals. If you spend your energy managing your adult child's decisions, you don't have to face the decisions you yourself have been putting off for years. Fixing someone else feels like effort. It feels like work. You come home exhausted from the emotional weight of it. But none of that exhaustion is building anything in your own life. It is entirely spent, entirely gone, and it produces nothing you can hold on to 5 years from now. This is worth a real, honest exercise. Think about the energy you currently spend on someone else's choices, their habits, their mistakes. Now imagine, just for a moment, redirecting every bit of that energy into your own life instead. Your own health, your own work, your own financial habits, your own personal growth. What would that look like in 5 years? Not in a vague, general sense, but specifically. What would your body feel like? What would your finances look like? What would you have built with your hands and your time? I think if most people sat with that question honestly, they would realize the life on the other side of that redirected energy is almost unrecognizable compared to where they are standing now. And that is the whole point. That energy has to go somewhere. Right now, for a lot of people, It is going into a project that was never actually theirs to complete. Here is something practical you can start today. Next time you feel the urge to bring up the thing again, the habit, the mistake, the same conversation you have had a dozen times before, pause and ask yourself one question. What could I do with this exact energy if I turned it toward my own life instead? Sometimes the answer is as simple as going for a walk instead of rehearsing an argument in your head. Sometimes it is opening a book on something you want to learn instead of drafting a text message you are going to regret sending. Small redirections, repeated daily, add up to an entirely different life over time. And here's the part that surprises people most. When you stop pouring your attention into someone else's flaws and start pouring it into your own growth, something shifts in the relationship itself, something you were not expecting. We will get to exactly what that shift looks like and why it matters more than anything you could have said in all those years of trying. But first, there is something harder we need to talk about. Something about how all that fixing actually feels on the receiving end. If what I'm describing is landing for you, do me a favor. Like this video and pass it along to someone in your life who needs to hear it. Someone who might be pouring their whole heart into fixing somebody who was never asking to be fixed. This is the kind of thing that is easier to hear from a stranger on a screen than from the people closest to us. So let's get it in front of the people who need it. Now here is the part of this conversation that is the hardest to hear, and it is also the most important. When you are in the middle of trying to fix someone, it feels like love from where you are standing. But from where they are standing, it very rarely feels that way. It feels like judgment. It feels like being a project instead of a person. Think about the message underneath every well-meaning suggestion, every have you thought about, every I only mention this because I care about you. The message, whether you intend it or not, is this. Who you are right now is not quite enough. I am holding back my full acceptance of you until you become something different. And no one, no matter how much they love you, can absorb that message over and over without it changing how they feel around you. This is why so many relationships quietly erode without anyone being able to point to a single fight that caused it. There is no dramatic blow-up. There is just a slow pulling away. The other person stops sharing as much. They stop asking for your opinion. They stop wanting to spend long stretches of time with you, and you cannot quite figure out why, because in your mind you have been nothing but caring and patient the entire time. But in their mind, you have been the person who could never simply let them be who they are. Jim Rohn often spoke about the importance of accepting people as they are while still working on your own development. And I think that distinction is the whole key here. Loving someone does not mean you love the version of them you imagine they could become if they just made a few changes. It means you love the person actually standing in front of you, including the parts you might genuinely wish were different. That is a much harder thing to do than it sounds, and it is the thing that actually keeps relationships alive over the long run. Here is a story worth sitting with. I once knew a man who spent nearly 2 decades quietly reshaping the way he spoke to his wife, softening every criticism, framing every suggestion as gently as he could, always telling her it was because he loved her and wanted the best for her. And for a long time, it seemed to work, at least on the surface. She made small adjustments here and there, but underneath it, something was wearing down that neither of them could name. One day, she told him she felt like she had spent their entire marriage being quietly improved, like a house under permanent renovation instead of a home anyone actually got to relax in. She was not describing a lack of love. She was describing exhaustion, the exhaustion of never once feeling fully accepted as she already was. That is the real, hidden cost of fix mode, and it is one most people never see coming until the relationship has already started to crack under the weight of it. It does not matter how gentle your tone is or how many times you say, I only bring this up because I love you. The underlying message repeats itself in the other person's mind, regardless of your intentions. And repeated often enough, it becomes corrosive. If this video has been useful to you so far, this is exactly the moment to hit like and share it with someone. Because what we are about to cover next is the one thing you can actually do that has any real power to influence the people you love. And it is almost nobody's first instinct. So if trying to fix people does not work and often actively damages the relationship, what is the alternative? Jim Rohn's answer, and one I have come to believe completely, is this. You cannot lecture people into change, but you can influence them through example. Living the thing yourself, quietly and consistently, is the only form of influence that tends to last. This works differently than most people expect, and it requires patience most people are not prepared for. When you stop pushing someone to change and instead turn your full attention onto building your own life, something interesting happens. The other person is no longer on the defensive. There is no more pressure to resist, no more suggestions to push back against. And in that absence of pressure, people often start paying attention in a way they never did before, quietly, without announcing it, sometimes without even realizing they are doing it. But here is the catch, and it is an important one. This only works if you actually live it, not perform it. You cannot say, "I'm working on myself," and maybe you should too. That is just the same old fixing wearing a different outfit. It has to be real. Handle your own health without turning it into a lecture for anyone else. Get your own finances in order without mentioning it as a suggestion for someone else's. Build the habits you have been putting off, quietly, consistently, for yourself and no one else's benefit. I want to be honest with you about the timeline here, because this is where most people give up too early. This is not a 2-week transformation. In the first year, you might notice almost nothing change in the people around you. That can feel discouraging, like all this effort toward your own life is happening in a vacuum. By the second year, you might start to notice small things. A question someone asks that they never would have asked before. A small shift in how someone handles something, made quietly, without any comment about it. By the third year, the changes tend to become more visible. Somebody comes to you with something they are struggling with. Somebody starts showing up differently, on their own, without being asked. Now, here is the part of this conversation that is the hardest to hear, and it is also the most important. When you are in the middle of trying to fix someone, it feels like love from where you are standing. But from where they are standing, it very rarely feels that way. It feels like judgment. It feels like being a project instead of a person. Think about the message underneath every well-meaning suggestion, every "have you thought about," every "I only mention this because I care about you." The message, whether you intend it or not, is this: who you are right now is not quite enough. I am holding back my full acceptance of you until you become something different. And no one, no matter how much they love you, can absorb that message over and over without it changing how they feel around you. This is why so many relationships quietly erode without anyone being able to point to a single fight that caused it. There is no dramatic blow-up. There is just a slow pulling away. The other person stops sharing as much. They stop asking for your opinion. They stop wanting to spend long stretches of time with you. And you cannot quite figure out why. Because in your mind, you have been nothing but caring and patient the entire time. But in their mind, you have been the person who could never simply let them be who they are. Jim Rohn often spoke about the importance of accepting people as they are while still working on your own development. And I think that distinction is the whole key here. Loving someone does not mean you love the version of them you imagine they could become if they just made a few changes. It means you love the person actually standing in front of you, including the parts you might genuinely wish were different. That is a much harder thing to do than it sounds, and it is the thing that actually keeps relationships alive over the long run. Here is a story worth sitting with. I once knew a man who spent nearly 2 decades quietly reshaping the way he spoke to his wife, softening every criticism, framing every suggestion as gently as he could, always telling her it was because he loved her and wanted the best for her. And for a long time, it seemed to work, at least on the surface. She made small adjustments here and there, but underneath it, something was wearing down that neither of them could name. One day, she told him she felt like she had spent their entire marriage being quietly improved, like a house under permanent renovation, instead of a home anyone actually got to relax in. She was not describing a lack of love. She was describing exhaustion, the exhaustion of never once feeling fully accepted as she already was. That is the real, hidden cost of fix mode, and it is one most people never see coming until the relationship has already started to crack under the weight of it. It does not matter how gentle your tone is, or how many times you say, "I only bring this up because I love you." The underlying message repeats itself in the other person's mind, regardless of your intentions. And repeated often enough, it becomes corrosive. And somewhere in that stretch, often between years 3 and 7, something happens that never happened during all those years of fixing. Somebody comes to you and asks how you did it. They ask what changed. And when that happens, you have finally earned the kind of influence that actually sticks, the kind that was invited instead of imposed. That is the only form of help that ever really takes root in another person's life. This requires a kind of faith that is hard to hold on to in the moment. Faith that focusing entirely on your own growth is not selfish, and that it is, in fact, the most generous thing you can offer the people you love. It is a strange thing to accept, that stepping back from someone's problems can do more for them, and for your relationship with them, than years of direct involvement ever could. There is one more piece to this, something that ties the whole idea together, and it might be the most important part of everything I have shared with you today. Here's the truth I want to leave you with, and I think it might be the single most useful thing Jim Rohn ever taught, even though he said it in 100 different ways across 100 different talks. Your life is the one project you were actually given. Not your spouse's life. Not your children's lives once they are grown. Not your friends' choices or your siblings' habits. Your own life, your own growth, your own daily discipline. That is the entire assignment. And it has been the entire assignment the whole time. When you finally set down the burden of trying to manage someone else's choices, something remarkable happens. And it happens in 3 ways. First, you get your energy back. All that mental weight you have been carrying, the rehearsed conversations, the low-grade frustration that colors every interaction, it starts to lift. And you notice you have more patience, more clarity, and more genuine enjoyment of the people around you, simply because you have stopped constantly editing them in your mind. Second, the people around you begin to sort themselves out on their own timeline, in their own way. Some of them, freed from the pressure of your expectations, begin to grow in directions you could never have pushed them toward. Others stay exactly where they have always been. And that, too, is useful information, because now you can see the relationship clearly for what it actually is, rather than what you have been hoping to turn it into. And third, your own life begins to grow, often faster than you expect. All that energy that used to be spent managing someone else's decisions flows back into your own goals, your own health, your own work. You start becoming, slowly and steadily, the person you have been telling yourself for years that you wanted to be. Jim Rohn used to say that we must all suffer one of 2 things, the pain of discipline or the pain of regret. The pain of finally turning your attention toward your own life is real. And in the beginning, it can feel uncomfortable, even lonely. But it is nothing compared to the pain of looking back after 20 years and realizing you spent your one life trying to build somebody else's. So here's what I would ask you to do, starting today. Think of the 1 or 2 people you have been quietly trying to fix. And in your mind, gently, without bitterness, set them down. They are not a project. They are whole people, capable of their own decisions, their own growth, their own timeline. Your job was never to complete them. Your job was always your own life, sitting there, waiting patiently for you to finally pick it back up. My name is Walter, and I hope this way of thinking, inspired by a philosophy that has shaped so many lives, finds its way into yours. If it has meant something to you today, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because there is a lot more of this conversation still to have, and I would love for you to be here for it.